Hello, it's Greg and guys. We're back. We hope you're having a happy day wherever you listen to this audio content from. As always, I'd like to thank you for your continued support of Greg and guys in social media and writing efforts. Thank you, thank you, thank you. It's been a while since I've done a show. I was just talking to my great friend. There truly are not enough greats to describe my relationship with my good buddy, Braden. He's lived off and on in Japan for a long time, both near and far from me, and now quite far. Not had the best year. Best wishes to him. He's had a lot going on. Haven't we all? Me too. Not the probably Little Miss Mary Sunshine that I generally try to be all the time with him, and I apologize publicly to him for that. But I do try. And I was going to talk about life and things, but you know what? He was watching a video I did for my private Facebook, a live feed. I talked to myself basically for an hour late at night when my family was out doing things that they're passionate about, and people really enjoyed it, and he found it an escape. And I realized that I did it for me maybe to escape. And of course this year people have trouble getting in and out of Japan. Only recently the conditions have opened up to let basically residents come in. And so I think that's for another day. And the US election situation is a mess. And however that turns out, it won't be decided certainly anytime soon by the looks of it. But he suggested that I talk about Japanese food. I love Japanese food. If you follow me on Craig Hoffman11 on Twitter, and you should, you know I post an inordinate amount of pictures featuring all things Japanese food and things that I eat in general in Japan. People love that. It's my most engaged material on Twitter, I'm sure, although I wish my writings and books and novels were. I have a new short story coming out soon that's kind of Japanese focused, not particularly in Japanese. That'd be a lot to ask, but it's a Japan kind of based story that I think people will really enjoy. It's in final edits with my great team of people. But yes, the Japanese food stuff, and of course I used to travel more when life didn't stink, but these days I'm kind of trapped in my house, and I'm trying to save money as I still look for a full-time job and try to find work and go on with my life. So again, that is a Debbie Downer kind of subject, so I'm not going to talk about that. But and forgive the cough, it's been one of those things. I've been out every morning playing badminton outside and in the grass, and this time of year it kind of gets to my allergies. But I'm going to do the best I can. I should probably grab a beverage before I do this, but I'll stay with it and do the best that I can. Again, it doesn't mean that I know everything about Japanese food, but I've been here 15 plus years. I have eaten a lot of it. My lovely wife cooks a lot of it, taken thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of pictures, and I've talked extensively to people over the years about what they like and don't like about Japanese food and where they go. So I'll kind of do this from my perspective, Japanese people perspective, and foreigner tourists that I know that have come, and I've hosted and helped on a number of homestays and such events and food events. So I know a little bit more probably than the average bear, if you're a Yogi Bear fan, a great cartoon long ago in America. So in no particular order, and again, not deeply, but however many minutes I can go with this as I'm home alone while people I care about are pursuing their passions, it's a good chance to kind of blow off some steam and talk about a light and fluffy topic that maybe people will appreciate. So I'll try to do my best. Hopefully I can cover as many foods as come to mind, and if I make a mistake in going, I'm just going to go and rattle off what I think, and when I think I've talked enough about that, I'm going to move on. So there's that. Here we go. Sushi, probably the most well-known Japanese food. Sushi, traditional Japanese food. It has vinegar rice and seafood, and sometimes other things are used. And nare sushi is another type of fermented sushi that many people don't know. Also, there is nigiri sushi and temaki sushi. That's like the rolled kind of sushi, which is kind of the American version. I know when I was home last with my beloved family that's kind of what we ate, along with some frozen tuna sashimi that was supposed to be high quality. So there's that. Some people don't like the raw fish, and that's okay. You can have prawns or things like conger eel. That's okay. And you can pay a lot. I've paid as much as sen-in, that's about $10 a plate, down to about 90 yen, that's about 90 US cents at the kaiten sushi, that's the conveyor belt sushi. Several big chains exist in Japan. But of course, if you come to Japan, you should definitely eat sushi. In Tokyo, of course, there is a great fish market, which is recently opened. Again, not to talk about downer subjects, but it had been closed and off from the public. But you can go and see where they buy that stuff really early in the morning. They don't love you to touch the fish, and I think there's some prohibition on photographs, but that's well worth it. But the sushi is pretty good. But again, 95% of the sushi that I eat is conveyor belt sushi, or more recently from the supermarket. I don't particularly make that at home, and I'll talk a little bit about what we make at home and what we don't make at home. Sushi is just easier to buy. By the time I bought all the fish and my wife cut it and I made the rice, I mean, we make the temaki sushi and chirashi sushi, which is the shredded sushi for special events like Girls' Day, which is in March, but otherwise I'm just going to buy it. And I don't know if that's lazy or really, really smart. You'll have to be the judge. Next food I'll talk about, tempura. Tempura is also a popular dish. I eat it a lot. Generally seafood, vegetables, and often mushrooms. And I like tamanegi, which is eggs. So that's great. It's a flour and egg batter and deep fried in oil. It's kind of a year-round kind of food. Some of the foods in Japan are seasonal, so even if you come to Japan on vacation, you are likely to miss some of them. But again, it's reasonably priced most places. I had a tempura don, which is tempura on top of rice the other day for about $5 US. It was great. It had shrimp, seafood, shrimp, eggplant, mushroom, and fried shiso, which is like Japanese parsley. So that was really good. Again, inexpensive. You can pick it up. Again, supermarkets, there are tempura restaurants. I generally don't go because it's something that my wife makes at home. Next, let's talk about sukiyaki. Sukiyaki is a Japanese dish with meat and vegetables that are stewed in an iron pot. That's in a special sauce. Warishita is a sauce of soy sauce and, let's see, sugar. Ooh, I'm trying to remember a lot here. So you can have a lot of different ingredients depending on where you live in Japan. I don't eat it a lot. You can use it with like beaten raw egg, and I know that freaks out a lot of foreigners. It's not one that I generally take homestay or foreign guests to when they're here. But once or twice a year, my mother-in-law buys some really nice beef, and we have that together. So I do recommend that sukiyaki. It's also a nice traditional Japanese song if you're ever into Japanese kind of old style music. So there's that. Next, let's talk about ramen. No conversation about Japanese food would be complete without talking about ramen. Ramen, of course, is a noodle dish, and basically is Japanese food. And originally that was chicken bones, but now, and if you're a vegetarian, sorry, it's generally pork, beef, and seafood broth. Even if it says vegetarian, now there's a good tip. Even if it says it's vegetarian ramen, I took a vegetarian once to a ramen restaurant, said I want the vegetarian ramen. It was on the menu, got it, but there was still a pork broth, and that person was not very happy with me. You can also get a version that's called tsukemen, which is the noodles and soup are served betsu, which is separately. So there's that. Ramen restaurants all over Japan, but you can buy it again in the supermarket for anywhere from $2 to $5 US, and you can make it right at your house. I make it all the time. We eat it probably 3 or 4 times a week. It's probably my lovely, lovely, lovely wife's favorite food, Japanese food, and probably food in general. She loves the shoyu tonkatsu and shoyu miso ramen. So there's that, right? So next, let's talk about curry and rice. In fact, I'm having keema curry. It's on my stove while I'm talking quick and trying to record this. Curry rice is, of course, from India, but the Japanese version of curry rice is very Japanese, and there are a zillion kinds of curry. Kokoichi is a famous restaurant in Japan. I haven't been there in about 15 years because I do make it at home. Japanese curry was from England into Japan. Generally, again, meat and vegetables, and we generally use carrots, potatoes, onions. My wife keeps it pretty simple. Curry powder, you can buy these little blocks to dissolve in hot water for the curry sauce. Quick and easy and year round. I probably have it at least once a week, if not twice. Sometimes you get like pork cutlet, which is the tonkatsu, on top of that. And we generally do that. I have like tonkatsu for like Tuesday lunch. And then Wednesday, I have tonkatsu curry. So it's quick and easy. Again, people in my family are busy with lessons and things that they enjoy. So there's not a lot of time, cooking time. So we do it. Again, you can eat it at Kokoichi, and I'm not to cast aspersions on Kokoichi, but it's really great to cook at home. I spoke just a second ago about tonkatsu. Tonkatsu is really popular. It's one of my favorite Japanese food. That's a popular pork cutlet that's fried in its flour and egg batter coated with like breadcrumbs and deep fried in oil. You're not going to pass very many health checks perhaps. But there's two kinds. You got the sirloin and the filet tonkatsu. Filet tonkatsu, generally more expensive, but I like it. I'm not going to lie. But you can get it again. Most izakayas and Japanese restaurants will feature that. Again, you can get it on top of rice. But the specialty restaurants are a bit more expensive. Again, I go to the supermarket for $3 or $4 US. I can get a nice tonkatsu pre-made, pop it in the microwave at home, and there I go. Soba is another noodle dish. That's a more traditional Japanese food, maybe. Buckwheat. Soba is buckwheat flour, and generally eat that with soy sauce and sugar. Egg and tempura. You can put almost anything in soba. Generally, I have a summer version, which is Zaro soba. And sauce, I like that. It's colder. I don't love hot noodles. I don't hate them, but again, that's kind of my thing. Udon. You can get that hot or cold. Udon is also another popular noodle dish. Again, wheat flour. The sauce there, let's see, soy sauce and sugar. It's similar to the soba sauce, I guess. And you can get that at any number of like standing soba noodle shops. There's one in Akashi that I used to go to. You can put the money in the little kiosk, and you can come out. It's really good in the winter in a dish called nabe yaki udon. The next dish is probably my lovely wife's favorite. That's karage. That's the chicken, and usually that's with soy sauce and salt and whatever spices you have. She buys a little karage pack. I've never even bothered to know what that's like, but it's fried chicken basically. It's different. There's a lot of different varieties. I like chicken nanban, which has like boiled egg on the top, and that's famous in Miyazaki, I believe. So there's that. It's like a tartar kind of sauce, and so it's great. So I don't mean to get off track there, but I'm trying to hit the highlights here. Karage is very popular. You can get it almost at any convenience store, Lawson's, 7-Eleven, Daily Yamazaki, AM, PM. There's just, it's ubiquitous across Japan because it's quick and easy, cheap, and people love it. And again, you can put that on yakitori don or karage don. Yakitori's coming up next, I think, if I can think of something to say. But karage is good on top of almost anything. Again, chicken nanban, people don't eat a lot, but we have it at least once a month. Next, I want to talk about yakitori. Yakitori is a skewered chicken. Again, salt and soy sauce, almost all of these, basic Japanese, traditional Japanese food, traditional Japanese ingredients. So you're not getting a lot of spices that perhaps you're used to if you're from a European country or even parts of the southern United States. Yakitori is one of those Japanese foods, again, like most of them, you can get the cheaper versions for $1 or $2 per stick, and you can get them for $5 or $6 or even more US dollars depending on where you go. I've been to some really nice yakitori nomi hodai, that's the all-you-can-drink specials, and it adds up, but it's high quality. And so if you like drinking and you like chicken, although you will eat any number of parts of the chicken, so there's that. The next, speaking of meat, yakiniku. Yakiniku is probably one of my top 2 or 3 Japanese foods. It's basically sometimes known as Korean barbecue, and you grill the meat, sometimes on an open flame in most of the restaurants. It's been a while, with the way things are. You can get the sirloin, which I like. Kalbi, my wife likes a lot. That's the Korean style marinade. I like both. I like meat. I'm from Midwest Ohio, so there's that. Again, price varies a lot. I've had yakiniku for about $10 US, all you could eat, and added probably a drink special for another $10. And I've had yakiniku at like the Enkais with some of my old companies for $50, $60, $70, $80, and even $100 US. So you get what you pay for. Not generally a Kobe beef kind of thing because that's high quality. You wouldn't really grill that to a degree, and you probably should have somebody that's an expert in that, grilling that. Otherwise, you just bought meat for nothing. But I've had some Kobe Tajima Gyu, which is kind of the big family of Kobe beef. So it's pretty good. And if you have a chance, definitely Yakiniku for a Western person who maybe doesn't like all the fish, especially raw fish, which we'll talk about next. Sashimi, traditional Japanese food. Again, it's like sushi, but it's cut, generally served with wasabi, which is like the Japanese horseradish, although about 90 to 95% of wasabi, even in Japan, is not authentic. So if you think that you have eaten wasabi and you've been to basic sushi restaurants, even in Japan, you probably have never had or rarely had wasabi. So there's that. Again, price varies in that. You can get it from about 100 yen, that's about a dollar US, to even $10 or $20. And I've been to $20 a plate sushi restaurants in Tokyo, or sashimi rather, and even in Hokkaido it was steep. And there's a great story there that I should share with about my good friend Braden and I hooking up with the guy eating expensive sushi and sashimi. Let's see, Shabu Shabu. Let's talk about that. Shabu Shabu is one I don't generally eat a lot. That's a meat and vegetables in boiled water, stock of like kombu, a Japanese kind of ingredient there. Another sauce, ponzu, and sometimes the sesame seed. That's Goya, if you're ever here and you want to know Goya. Or not Goya, Goma. Goya is a Japanese food, which I like too. I should talk about that. My family loves that. But Goma, that is the sesame seed. Comes in beef and pork there, although other meats you can do, but those are the ones that I generally have. A few restaurants are both Sukiyaki, which I talked about earlier, and the Shabu Shabu. Again, I don't eat it a lot. It's not something that I love. Cow tongue, I don't love, but I should probably talk about. If you were in Sendai, gyutan is pretty popular there, and you might eat that with rice, and it's generally served with other things like let's see, white cabbage. You might get some chili peppers, and miso paste is in there. Hit or miss. Some people love that. My wife loves it. I can eat it, but I don't love it. Kaiseki ryori, that is not really a dish, but it's the fancier stuff. If you get a chance to go to a Japanese wedding, you're probably going to eat something along that. Again, it's not cheap. I took my family when they came here. It was about $70 a person for a light dinner, and I've spent $200 in Kyoto, which is another version of it. But I spent a lot of money. So if you have the money, you should eat it. If you don't have the money, it's pretty small and delicate and beautiful. So if you like it, you should probably try it. Probably go for lunch. A lot of the Kyoto hotels have little lunch sets that are reasonably priced. Again, we're not going to try to get every Japanese food, but some of my favorites. Onigiri, rice ball, eat a lot of those when we go on trips, and I used to do it when I worked at my old job. The school kids always had them, and every Ensoko, that's the field trip that we took, we had. That is a rice ball. You can fill that with plums, that's umeboshi if you like that, cod roe, tarako, or you can do it with just regular seaweed. I mean, I saw one today I almost bought for like $1. Again, they're not expensive. For about 80 cents actually. You could have had a tuna version of that for my lunch, which sometimes I do. My wife makes me a big rice ball sometimes when I'm really hungry, or I don't have time to. When I'm really hungry and I don't have time to eat, I shouldn't eat on the train, but I kind of do. Next, let's talk about unagi. Eel. I love unagi. There's even a day in July where everybody buys eel and the price gets jacked up a lot. You can grill that, and there is a sauce, shiro yaki, and there's kabayaki. All those names aren't so important, but if you hear them, then you kind of know what to talk about. So usually on rice, there's a shop near my house. It's about $35 for one eel. And eel is not a snake, it's a fish. So there's that, not to be missed. I love unagi. And you can get the little bite-sized pieces if you're really kind of worried about eel. They sell it at the kaiten sushi, the conveyor belt. Crab, no conversation about Japanese food will be complete if you didn't talk about kani. That is probably uniquely Japanese. The hairy crab, that's kegane. I eat. That's really expensive. I'm kind of on the cheap, so I don't usually buy that. The kani miso is probably the most famous dish, my favorite, and that's miso and mixed with some of the crab, and it's actually a green kind of thing in the intestine. So it's bitter, but if you put that on a slice of cucumber, it's fantastic. So not to be missed there. So I got about 10 minutes left. I promised I would talk about 30 minutes here, because longer than that, people just turn you off. Fried dishes, of course, things like tonkatsu I talked about, but also croquette. Those are the croquets. Mince cuts, those are like the mince meats. You can get it pork and beef. And let's see, shrimp croquette you can do. You can do a cream croquette, which is good. And of course, my number one favorite, oyster, deep fried oysters. We're moving into the winter season here. And that is definitely one of my ultimate favorite kind of thing. Cushy cuts, also a great bar favorite, especially in my area. That's Kansai. And they put them again on skewers like the yakitori, but it's deep fried. It's probably a little better if you're not a big chicken person. Yakitori tends to be generally chicken, which some people are kind of chickened out, especially when they're here for more of the fish. Kushikatsu is generally Worcestershire sauce. Ooh, I said that right. That's great, right? And you should share with other customers, but don't double dip, although people do all the time, even Japanese people. I like that. The pork on the uzura, which is quail eggs, is awesome. Again, another winter food I want to talk about, Oden. Regional food for sure. I generally like the meat, the egg, and the daikon, which I haven't talked about, the Japanese radish. You can get any number of things. The soup is good. The dashi is really good. I eat it a lot at my house in the winter. Quick and easy for my wife to make. I also eat it at the Tachinami, which is the standing bar that I haven't been to, of course, with all the stuff going on, but it was a cheap and easy dinner for me, a few pieces of that. You can get it at a lot of the convenience stores, although some of them now, with the way things are, have stopped selling that. Another Kansai dish, I live in the Kansai area, okonomiyaki. That's a vegetable meat pork. You can put almost anything in it, usually cabbage, and it's Japanese pizza or Japanese pancake, depending on the translation. Again, shops sell that. It's a pretty inexpensive food, especially for lunch or dinner. And in my area, I often get yakisoba, which is fried noodles. It's and also with the Korean cabbage, buta kimchi yakisoba meshi, which is like the cut up rice and noodle fries. Really great. Again, you could go weeks and days describing all the great foods in Kansai. Another one is a pork shogayaki. That is really, ginger is shoga, but the pork is really thin, and then they put that soy sauce and Japanese rice wine. And so that's kind of good. I don't eat a lot of that, but I bring it up because I was thinking about my job just a second ago. And a lot of the kyushoko, that's the school lunch, we used to eat a lot of buta shogayaki. I think it's cheap and pretty easy for the lunch people to do and make. So fugu, blowfish, again, expensive. Although you can get it cheaply. There was a Japanese bar in Akashi for a long time. I think it's still there. But depending on the season, you can get the skin or a sashimi for probably $6 to $9 US. Again, with beer, it's pretty good. I've had a full-on course dinner with my good buddy Braden. I bring him up a lot because this show's for him. 4 people was about Ichiman. That's about $100 US. And we added, of course, some beer. So probably, let's say, about $50 a person. We had about every kind of blowfish dish that you can. You can buy it in the supermarket. We buy the smaller fish, which are far less dangerous. There's really no risk of poison there. Throw them in a nabe, which is a Japanese pot sticker dish, which I probably don't have time to get to, but that's another winter dish that one should definitely have. Gyoza. Gyoza is Chinese dumplings, but in Japan, things like gyoza osho, which is the gyoza king, definitely worth going. You can get that boiled or you can get that fried. You can get about half a dozen of those for probably $2 to $3 US. That and some beer and some ramen, which we discussed earlier, you cannot be beat and again, one of my favorite places for that, Gyoza no Osho, especially in my area. They're all over this area, so it's great. Omurice, my family loves that a lot rather. That's rice and chicken and onions fried together, and usually there's ketchup on it, although other sauces are possible there. The kids really love that. I like it, and there's several varieties of egg dishes over rice. Another one called Tenshinhan, which I probably don't have time for, but Tenshinhan is a Chinese version of that with some sauce, egg over rice, and you can even do that with crab too. So egg dishes over rice, for example, omurice, omelet rice, you should definitely try, especially if you're not, again, if you're not a super vegetarian, maybe you're more vegan, or if you're not really feeling the raw fish. Let's see, some other, as you try to, Neapolitan spaghetti, there's a good one. There is a spaghetti dish, Neapolitan spaghetti that's got the wieners and onions and green peppers in the pasta and the ketchup sauce. My wife does make that now and again. People like it. Katsumeshi I should throw in there in my area is really fast. That's the fried pork cutlet with cabbage and sauce over rice. There is an Iroha Katsumeshi in my area if you ever have a chance. That place is pretty good. They even wrap it and put it deep fried on a stick. Another egg dish, tamagoyaki. Tamagoyaki is the rolled omelets. You're going to get that a lot if you go to any hotel for breakfast for sure. I love it. They do a little sauce, which is like a soy sauce. That's dashi. And that, the names you're never going to remember. But you can listen to this a bunch. And you can look it up later for yourself. But you can get that in restaurants. Again, hotel breakfast buffets are almost 100% going to have that. It's good for breakfast, lunch, and or dinner. You're going to get that in the bentos if you buy a bento box. It's good. If you like omelets, you're gonna love that for sure. And so, I recommend that. Potato salad. Man, recently, can I tell you that I was watching this video and they've been promoting tourism in Tokyo because people don't go anymore, right? And they were like, oh, potato salad is really popular. I asked my lovely wife, I said, is potato soup, or potato soup, well, we're going to talk about that in a second, potato salad very, very good? And she said, oh, it's great and it's popular. I just always thought of that as an American thing, and I always thought of it as something that was just kind of slapped in a bento, a Japanese lunchbox. But recently, everywhere I look, potato salad, and even more recently, macaroni salad. So, but unlike a lot of the American versions, they put corn, cucumber, carrots, and onions in that. So it's great. I highly recommend, even if you don't like potato salad, that you try Japanese potato salad. We're about to close out. I think I've got about 3 or 4 minutes here. Miso soup is not really a dish in itself, although with enough in it, there tonjiru, you can get a pork version of that where you put pork in there. But you can put things like bonito, flakes, kombu, Japanese seaweed. Again, daikon I mentioned before, Japanese radish is popular. There's an instant version, so you don't really have to do anything other than boil hot water. I used to get it when I worked and I had a job. I would get it for my lunch. Tonjiru I mentioned. Butajiro is almost the same way. Again, that's the pork version of that. And again, I have that every single time for dinner when my wife cooks. She loves it. It's good for health. And it adds a little extra nutrition to make up for some of the things that maybe you're missing because I eat a lot of hamburgers for left. Tofu. Tofu, of course, is now well known overseas. It came to America long ago as trying to be a meat substitute. That didn't go over very well. I love tofu. I eat it every single morning with ponzu for breakfast, which is another kind of Japanese sauce, but it's in a number of dishes. I mentioned, I misspoke and I talked about goya, which is a Japanese Okinawan bitter root, and goya champuru, fried tofu, and that mixed together cannot be beat. I mean, you could eat bowls and bowls and bowls of that with a Okinawan style beer called Orium, or Japanese Okinawan alcohol, awamori, which is great. Edamame is a smaller dish. That's the small baby soybeans, and they're generally boiled and salted. If you go to any izakaya Japanese bar or standing bar, that's the tachinomi, they're usually even service, which is not free. Be careful. That can be anywhere from $3 to $5 to $10 along with your beer. But it's easy, cheap, and you just don't eat the shell. That's bad. There's a big tip. Don't eat the shells of the edamame, right? And so, but you pinch them out into your mouth and you eat them. They're healthy, and they go great with beer, almost like popcorn and peanuts in an American kind of way. The last Japanese food I will probably talk about is Japanese beer and spirits, which is not really a food, but I was telling somebody the other day, while Japanese food has spread around the globe, and especially in parts of America, Japanese spirits and beers have not. So I really recommend when people come to Japan to go to the supermarket. They sell the little cans. They're really small, like hitokuchi, like one drink kind of beers. But it's an excellent opportunity for a tourist to try a variety of beers without spending big money. If you go to the Nomi Hodai, of course, you could try 10 to 15 to 20 beers, but you're really going to get sloshed and hammered. And in a foreign country, that's probably not the best thing, although I probably have done it a number of times. Again, shout out to my good buddy Braden. We've done that together a million times, but we're experts in the field. But if you go to, and I don't go to the convenience store, notice I said the supermarket because it's cheaper. The price of beer from the same beer that you're going to get for $4 or $5 in a Japanese bar, or $2.50 to $3 in a convenience store, is probably $2 or less in a Japanese supermarket. So you should go there. And they really sell these little beers. You should just buy like 5 or 6, it doesn't really matter, and try them and see if you can really tell a difference. The other part of Japanese beers is the seasonal varieties. There are literally winter, spring, summer, fall versions of almost all of those companies' beer. How much they taste different, I can't say. Again, if you are a stronger drinker and you like shochu, like Japanese whiskey or sake, I'm not a huge sake fan. I like mugi, that's a wheat kind of shochu. And I like, again, I mentioned earlier the Okinawa awamori. Again, you're going to spend a little money doing that. Although, if you go to the standing bar, my local standing bar, I think it's still open, I hope, has a glass, and I usually get it with hot. You get the bad whiskey with hot water, so I get the really cheap whiskey, and I tell them, in no matter the season, to give me a hot version of that mixed down with water, and I have a grand old time. So, again, that's not every Japanese food. It's not deep, but I promised my good buddy Braden that I would talk about something non-that word related, and certainly non-U.S. election related. So if you enjoy Japanese food, I hope you enjoyed this survey, and I hope it is of some value to you as you're looking to explore Japanese food in the future in your area, or hopefully very, very soon as a tourist in the great country that I've called home now for almost 16 years. That's it, and have a great day.